All right, so this has been a highly requested video, at least by my standards, and I was finally able to get my hands on one. So let's see how the Mercedes-Benz GLC 300 stacks up against its closest competition. Now I'm going to be referencing the Q5 and X3 reviews I did, so I'll link those down below. Go check those out as well. Now, on to the GLC. This is a 2021 Mercedes-Benz GLC 300, and it starts life at $43,000 here in the rear-wheel drive form and costs an additional $2,000 for 4MATIC all-wheel drive. Stepping into the AMG range, you'll be looking at about $60,000 for the 43 and about $70,000 starting for the official real big bad boy 63. Now for 2021, Mercedes-Benz just discontinued the GLE 350E, which was a hybridized torque monster of a GLC, making about 516 pound-feet of torque, at least combined pound-feet of torque. And I think that's a bit of an indication that the new and forthcoming GLC 300, the standard GLC 300, will be some sort of hybrid, which is completely in line with Mercedes-Benz now even showing off AMGs that will be hybridized. But back to this GLC 300, it's a stripper. It's as base gets. It only has $250 in options, which consist of a spare tire as well as a parking damage detector, which is a $50 option, so I'm not against it. But basically, if your car were to get struck or hit in any sort of sense while it's parked and you're not with it or in it, it can send you a push notification to your phone or leave a message on your MBUX saying, hey, the car has been hit, so at least you're aware of it. You could look for it, yada yada, maybe go ask for camera footage. Again, for 50 bucks, I'll take it. It's pretty neat. But yeah, this car is basically a stripper. So I need to stop saying that, but with destination and everything, it's still under $45,000 as equipped. So it is a pretty cheap GLC, or at least an affordable entry point into the GLC range. Now, personally, I wouldn't get this base of a GLC. I would tick on a few options, even if I were on a budget, and I'm gonna go through those later in the video. I'm gonna explain exactly what I would personally add, again, even on a budget, but you're gonna have to wait to the end of the video for that. But you do get some nice standard goodies on the GLC nonetheless, such as blind spot detection, keyless entry, and a good camera system and parking sensors. So alas, we have some goodies standard on a over $40,000 starting luxury car. It's about damn time. Now, the GLC 300 is powered by a turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder engine producing 255 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque, which is an identical power plant to the C-classes that I've reviewed on this channel, and I'll link up above. Now, the engine's mated to a 9-speed automatic transmission, and Car and Driver has tested the standard rear-wheel drive GLC 300 to 60 miles an hour in about 6 seconds flat, which is respectable. If you really want performance, then the AMG models are the ones that will scratch that itch for you, particularly the 63 with that sweet twin turbo V8. That is, if you're of course willing to shell out that extra dough. But enough about the specs. Let's get the GLC on the road and let's discover a bit more. So setting off here in the GLC, I immediately know that I'm in a Mercedes, and that's not just because I have eyes, but it's because this has all the standard Mercedes-Benz fare. From the column-mounted shifter to the electronic parking brake here by my left knee, it has the waterfall-style center console, it has the round AC vents, it has the seat controls here on the door, it even has all of the squeaks. I don't know if you guys can pick that up, but you got it all. This is that classic Mercedes-Benz formula, but I want to dig a bit deeper. So I currently have the car in comfort mode. I'm going to put it into sport mode. There's also a Sport Plus mode, but it's a bit too aggressive within just about every Mercedes-Benz unless you really are flogging the car, really going hard. So since I'm not mobbing, I'm in Sport, which basically just tightens up the steering and also makes the accelerator pedal a bit more sensitive. Nonetheless, the steering still isn't quite as heavy as I would like, but I will give it credit by saying that it's more direct than I'm used to, I guess. It's pretty direct and reminds me of the same steering I had in the C43 I drove a few years back. Didn't do a video on yet, but it has pretty sharp turn and decent road feel. I wish I could demonstrate right now and not be driving on a straight highway, but it does turn in a bit better certainly than the Audi Q5 due to its extremely nose-heavy all-wheel drive system, but even a bit better than the BMW X3, which kind of lacks any real feel through its steering, although it's a bit heavier than the steering. But yeah, I've been beating around the bush a bit. I want to actually specifically call out who this car's competitors are, which in my mind are most directly the BMW X3 and the Audi Q5. Now, there's no denying that you could throw a couple other cars onto that list, such as the Lexus NX, the Volvo XC60. You could throw on the Porsche Macan, so on, the Range Rover Evoque, so on and so forth. But realistically, I think this car's two main competitors are the X3 and the Q5. And keeping within that three-headed German monster of affordable luxury, my question is, who's giving me a better compact SUV? Bimmer, Benz, or Audi? Now, this is my subjective opinion, and it's at a surface level, and it regards basically the most base trims of these vehicles, but I think the Q5 looks the best, followed by this GLC with the X3 holding last place. None of them are going to blow you out of the water, but initial attraction is a contributing factor to purchase history, or at least purchase behavior. When it comes to dynamics, I think it's almost flipped the other way around, where the X3 is kind of the most dynamically stout or engaging to drive, and the Q5 sometimes falls flat in its face, and that's due to that very front heavy, nose heavy understeer that you find in many Audis, at least Audis that are not S or RS models with a more aggressive rear differential. Again, just like the looks, none of these cars are extremely dynamically capable or super fulfilling to drive, but I digress. The point is, they're all decent. Front and rear visibility are good in the GLC. The side view mirrors are comparable to those you could find in the X3, but neither of them are as excellent as the mirrors you'd find in the Q5. Those are really fantastic side view mirrors. Otherwise though, driving this car is easy, and visibility is certainly a contributing factor to the ease of driving this car. Really weird way to say that. So both the seating position and the seats themselves are only okay. The seats don't hug you in as nice as the X3 seats, and they're not quite as comfy as the Q5 seats. My real issue is with the ergonomics of the seating position. So we have this waterfall center console which flares out, and it kind of gets in the way of my knee. At least in my height, it limits the lateral movement of my knee to the right, which I guess I would like to go maybe another inch and a half more to the right. I can't. Okay, I'll settle. Strangely though, on the left-hand side, my knee can go all the way out to the edge of the door because there's an opening there. So my legs are kind of, I don't want to say asymmetrical, but my body begins to shift a little bit in a weird way. Now, up to the armrest, I have a really nice armrest here in the center. My arm goes nicely on it, right to the wheel, perfect. Now, I want to symmetrically put my arm down on the other side, but the armrest is a little too far out and up, so I find myself having to reach forward like that, and now my body's really shifted and conformed in a weird way, and it's noticeable, or at least perceivable to me, because within minutes I felt awkward shoulder pain or discomfort, my shoulder blade being overextended out here, while it's just a very weird feeling, and it's something that I noticed immediately, like I said, and I didn't notice in the X3 or the Q5, so something to note. But now let's get on to some of the good with the GLC. And one of the best things about the GLC is that it was facelifted in 2020 for last model year. And with that refresh, you get a tiny bit more power. You get an updated infotainment system, the latest version of MBUX, which is fantastic. It's a major upgrade. And you get a refreshed exterior. Now, the MBUX in particular is probably my actual favorite part of the update because it's what you interact with, and it makes sitting in a pre-2020, so 2019 and older GLC feel like super antiquated and frustrating. You still have this annoying to use trackpad down here, but not to worry. You have a touchscreen. You can speak to the car by saying, "Hey Mercedes,
how can I help?"
Hello. And that's really nice. I can't say much more than it's just really nice to have those features finally, and it feels much more up to date than again that 2019 and prior model did, even at the time. But speaking of the exterior, I do like the facelift as well on the exterior. I think it adds to the Mercedes brand appeal. The headlights now, even in base form as they are here, now are reflector style LED instead of just halogens, and they have a cool looking DRL, where again before they just had a little white LED reflector DRL. So these look a lot better. The turn signals look really cool as well. Moving on to the rear, the taillights now also mimic the same style you'd find in the all-new GLE and GLS. So you have this like kind of square or rounded off square shape on each individual part of the taillight. Looks really fresh. Just another nice factor when it comes to the styling of this car. The bumpers have been tweaked a bit as well, but that's more noticeable on either the full-on AMGs or even AMG line package on this car. But yeah, all in all, the update, the facelift, is good and it adds to the appeal of the GLC. Oh yeah, and you can call me petty for this, but both the GLC here and the Q5 have fake exhaust tips, and the X3 does not. Now, I'm not saying that largely affects my choice, but I don't like fake exhaust tips, and neither should you. The ride is supple, yet firm enough to inspire some of that confidence that you'd find also in the X3. These are both a step above the Q5 in that regard. The power delivery isn't amazing. I still feel as though this engine bogs down a lot, and something I've noticed, I've never driven a full-on AMG, I don't think I ever have, but I have driven a couple AMG 43 or 53 models, and I seem to notice it in all of them. Like, there's just a bit of that bog when you put your foot down and then the power comes on in a very theatric way, but it doesn't feel smooth and it doesn't feel quite as powerful as you'd like it to. Lag, bogging, ooh. But that is only if any sort of spirit of driving matters to people buying this car, and I'm guessing it does not. I think what does matter is comfort, and you guys already know how I feel when it comes to the seating ergonomics and comfort in this car. But I will give this car credit again in just how low the seat goes. The H point is what it's called. It's how low your hip is, basically. You just sit nice and low in these seats. It's something that I don't think you get in either the Q5 or the X3. I definitely don't think you get it in the X3, which is a shame. And it makes me want to give the GLC 63 a chance to prove to me that these ergonomics aren't as bad, maybe when you're being propelled by a twin-turbo V8. Unfortunately, the rear seats are also only just okay, and the armrest, again, on the doors is basically non-existent. I can pretty easily see 4 adults fitting in this. I'd have a hard time picturing 5 adults, or at least 5 of me fitting in this car. And that only annoys me because the GLB, which is effectively this car's little brother, little sister, is a 7-seater or has a 3rd row. So you would just kind of would think you could fit a little bit more people in this car, but I guess the X3 is kind of in the same boat. The Q5, however, has boatloads of rear seat legroom. There just seems to be an abundance of space where there just really isn't in this car. I would definitely not get the GLC Coupe if I wanted headroom for my rear seat passengers. I've sat in the back of a GLC 300 Coupe and it was absolutely miserable because it was cramped just like this, but then you had no headroom, and I'm 6'2", so I was not having a good time. It felt very much so like a CLA. But headroom in this standard GLC is pretty solid. Unfortunately, it's pretty solid because there's no sunroof, no panoramic sunroof, and that is an option that I would rather have. But before I delve into all of the options that I told you guys I would get into, that I would add on to this car, let's do a little tall boy test, and then we'll get into it. So here you go. So I would get the AMG line with night package, which is basically Mercedes lingo for a sporty body kit with blacked out chrome accents. And that $2,000 gets you a sporty exterior body kit, like I said, gets you nicer AMG wheels, sporty seats, which unfortunately also won't solve any of the ergonomic issues I have, but will hug you in a little nicer, more like those X3 seats. And it gets you a beloved, and I would say almost necessary, AMG steering wheel. I don't know. I'm one of those people who says even if the car isn't sporty or performance oriented, why not have a super nice steering wheel to interact with, because it's the very thing you use to steer and control your vehicle. So make it the best, and for me, chunky, perforated AMG steering wheel wins over this steering wheel. I would get the exterior lighting package because the active LEDs are even better than these and make driving at nighttime on a dark street a breeze. Bars. And like I said, I would get the sunroof, even though I typically don't like sunroofs. In a luxury car, you want it. I'm missing it right now. It lets a little bit of extra light into the cabin, which again, I usually don't like, but in this case or in this application, I would appreciate. And it's a standard Mercedes-Benz kind of touch, that large pano sunroof. You can get it on their sedans, you can get it on all these cars that usually you can't find it as easily on, although yes, in this segment, most of the other cars, most of its competition do have it. So I would go ahead and get that. I would get the Bimmer sound system because even though this bass system isn't terrible, and actually surprised me with how it's adequate, because in the C300s it was horrible, the Bimmer is still better and I want it. And just to spoil myself a little tiny bit more, I would get the digital gauge cluster because it's another additional touch to that really nice updated tech feeling of the 2020s, and it gives you a lot of modularity. All in, even despite everything I've said, you're still looking at only a $50,000 GLC, which I think is a fair price for what you're getting then, which is a lot more in that supposed car than in this car. And compared to the competition, that's about the same price as a mid-equipped or decently equipped Q5 or X3. So yeah, the GLC 300 is a contender for sure. Now, if you're considering a Q5, an X3, a GLC, or even some of the other options, go test drive some. See which cars you gel with. See which cars you like and make financial sense. For me personally, there's a few too many buts with this car. Luckily for Mercedes, there is a all-new GLC in the not-so-distant future. For now, all things considered, the X3 still reigns supreme. If you guys enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. New videos are coming out every single week. Comment down below. Let me know what you're trying to see. I'll try to make it happen. And as always, this is Rio.